Merry Christmas, everyone. This is Raphael the Film Nerd, and I remember it so you don't have to. And welcome to Film Nerd Gaming. In case if you can't guess, this is a new section on the channel where from now on, everything related to video games will be uploaded to. So, keep an eye out for this new playlist on the channel over the next few months. Yes, you down the front.
Does this have anything to do with gaming?
Sort of, I guess. Next to movies, music is actually my favourite art form, and I don't mean to come across as a bit of a snob, but I like to think of myself as a musical connoisseur. I listen to all genres, and my interests, various. Some of my favourite artists include David Bowie, The Beatles, Blur, The Chemical Brothers, Underworld, Fatboy Slim, The Beastie Boys, James Brown, Daft Punk, Gorillaz, XTC, NWA, and perhaps most importantly of all, Nintendo game soundtracks. And that last one probably got everyone's attention, regardless of age, sex, race, or taste in breakfast cereals. Cornflakes all the way. There's something about Nintendo music that really resonates with so many people, regardless of if you're more of a Zelda fan over, say, F-Zero, or Mario Teaches Typing 2, I don't know. Nintendo music is iconic. YouTubers use it quite often in their videos, artists remix or sample them all the time. The games themselves sometimes even include the ability to listen to or select tunes from certain games. The playlists in games like Super Mario Odyssey is a good example of this. And there's even Nintendo games which allow the players themselves to make music using Nintendo-branded chiptunes and samples, such as Mario Paint Composer and Super Mario Maker. Koji Kondo, arguably one of the most famous video game composers of all time, has become so famous since composing the soundtrack for the original Super Mario Bros. That he's even worked to compose soundtracks on movies such as Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and of course the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Really, the dedication that Nintendo has, not only to how they make music, but their history of composing music for games is quite extraordinary. But there's one thing that Nintendo didn't have that a lot of other artists did. Until now. So Nintendo have pretty much made their own version of Tidal on Spotify with an app called, get this, Nintendo Music. Well, I guess this at least falls into accurate advertising. The premise of this app certainly sounds promising. It's a Nintendo-branded app that allows you to listen to licensed Nintendo music. Because as we all know, Nintendo are a little bit too overprotective of their IPs to just make their own Tidal albums or a separate YouTube channel dedicated to their music. Yet they're quite happy with teaming up with LEGO to make some of the ugliest LEGO sets I've ever seen in my entire life. At first glance, this is something that a lot of Nintendo fans, including myself, have been asking for a very long time. An app by Nintendo that lets you listen to the music from their games. A good premise, sure, but if you scratch the surface, there are a few questions that beg to be raised. And the first question I have is, what's up with the characters' playlists? So the idea with this is that the app includes certain playlists based on the games or personalities of certain characters. You know those old YouTube videos where it's what kind of licensed pop music characters from, say, Sonic the Hedgehog or whatever would listen to? Well, it's basically that, but Nintendo ripped it off and used it for their characters, which I'm pretty sure has already been done on YouTube hundreds of times already. Besides, I think we all know that Bowser listens to Tenacious D in his spare time. You're not fooling anyone with this playlist here, Nintendo. The other function this app has is the ability to extend and loop certain tracks, which again has already been done on YouTube before. So in other words, why use an app that asks you to sign in with a Switch account when you can just Google Coconut Mall 10 hours and listen to it on YouTube for free? It's not like it's a bad feature or anything, but at the same time, it's already pretty much been done, just not by Nintendo. And this is the other thing, the app itself is free, but of course, you need to sign in using your Switch account, much like with everything else Nintendo has been advertising online. Who knows? At this rate, you'll need a Switch account to watch the next Mario movie at the cinemas. Don't ask me how they'd do that. They're Nintendo, for crying out loud. They'd pull it off in some way or another. Much like with Spotify and Tidal, Nintendo Music not only has its own playlists, but allows the user to make their own with the large library of video game soundtracks, from the NES-era games like the original Metroid and Legend of Zelda, to more modern games like Mario 3D World and Splatoon. It's a simple enough feature, but all music apps have that, so while it's not surprising, it definitely plays into that good old nostalgia factor that Nintendo is so very good at using to sell things to their audience. Now this is the part where I put in some constructive criticism regarding this app. And to start with, where are the credits for the artists behind all of these tunes? Of course, Nintendo obviously has credited the composers in the original games these pieces of music came from, but not in the app called Nintendo Music. The one time where these tunes can be listened to separate from the games themselves, with a few exceptions. But there's no credit to the composers. Now, I'm no Vivaldi when it comes to music, but composing music is pretty bloody difficult. Doesn't matter if you're using software or have access to an orchestra, it's very time consuming and definitely worth being credited for. And sadly, this isn't the first time Nintendo have failed to credit their own composers in media outside of the games where their music is used. You know that scene in the Mario movie where Donkey Kong, impeccably voiced by Seth Rogen, is introduced to the DK rap from Donkey Kong Country 64? Well, the composer for that song from that game wasn't credited. Something which he expressed disappointment in, and honestly, if I was him, I'd be a bit pissed myself. Another criticism I have is something that's already been pointed out by other Nintendo fans, but I'm just going to say it anyway. Why not just make a Nintendo Music YouTube channel or a Spotify and Tidal page? I know I said Nintendo are a little aggressive with their IP protection, and that point still stands by the way, but at the same time, this is a company that currently claims it's looking past just games to introduce its properties to a wider multimedia audience. And what better way to do that than to introduce their music on some of the largest music streaming platforms used today? They already have their own YouTube channel to announce releases of new games as well as awkward movie castings, so why not make another channel with their music on it to expand into that multimedia market? It's the whole reason they've been turning to movies, even going as far as to work with Sony, their supposed arch rival essentially, for a Zelda movie. But they can't manage a team up with music streaming services? Is there a law reason? I'm sorry, I don't mean to get so emotional here. It's just, they had their upcoming hardware leaked, and they respond by making an annoying alarm clock and a music app with the same functions you can find on other apps, but not with their music because of how protective they are with it. I'm just very, very confused, and this has been a very, very confusing year for all of us. Finance across the globe has gone tits up. Trump is going to be president of the United States again. MatPat is gone, and Nintendo are just making things all the more weird for the rest of us. But you know what? It's a new year next year, so maybe things will look up. If they don't, well, at least we tried to be optimistic despite how pointless it ended up being. And before you leave, don't forget to like and subscribe and comment. You gotta leave a comment, guys. You gotta leave a comment, and you gotta get me up to more subs, please. I'm begging you. I'll do anything. I'll even watch The Room with my eyes wedged open, Clockwork Orange style. Well, until then, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.